Everybody is used to spacesuits being white, but at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum's Conservation Lab, I got up close and personal with the A-5L, a blue developmental spacesuit designed for maximum mobility in extravehicular activity. Smithsonian's objects conservator, Lisa Young, one of my favorite fellow spacesuit connoisseurs, takes me on a deep tour through this suit, which would have been worn under the outer white covering we are all used to. Hey, welcome to Tested VR. I'm Adam Savage, and I'm in one of my favorite places in the world, the Conservation Department at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum with my friend Lisa Young. How are you, Lisa?
I'm great. I'm glad to have you back.
Dude, I'm so happy to be here. And every time I walk in, you have something unbelievable. Tell me about this incredible object.
Okay. This is the A-5L Apollo spacesuit. It was one of the prototypes that led to the A-7L, which is the lunar suit.
And that's the one I have a replica of.
Right, and the one Neil Armstrong used to walk on the lunar surface. So it's a little different, but actually this is found inside the other suit because this led to the pressure bladder, restraint system, and then the white cover that everybody's used to seeing, the beta cloth that's on the exterior, would just have been over this suit. Yes,
that's the thing that most people don't realize, is that underneath the white Apollo suits that we all grew up seeing going to the moon, this is inside of every one, this kind of structure.
Right, this kind of structure, not exactly the one, but all the valves are in the right places, the restraint system, the lacing, the mobility joints. This was one of the early prototypes that they presented when they were building the suit to show off the convolutes, which are these accordion-like rubber sections at the knees, ankles, shoulders, elbows, so an astronaut can move and be flexible in the suit when it was under pressure, and then also have mobility of their joints.
Right, so this is all because they're basically inside an anthropomorphic balloon, and the pressure is such that when they're bending that balloon, they're often changing the volume inside, and that makes it difficult. So all these convolutes are to offset that volumetric change.
Right, so the air can only be displaced into certain areas, and it doesn't keep traveling, and then you get, like you said, one of those balloons where you get one side not looking like your puppy anymore and the other side different. But yeah, and some of this lacing that you see, which is really interesting because we don't get to see the inside of spacesuits often.
No.
So that's the great thing about this suit. These were actually used for sizing as well. So every astronaut is a little bit different, even though they build the suit to someone's measurements.
Yeah.
And they take over 100 measurements or something unrealistic. It's still, you know, when you're in a suit, it's still going to be different.
Right.
Or your arm may have been grown since they took your measurements,
sure.
or something may have happened. So, and they want people to be as comfortable as possible to be able to work in that spacesuit. So
they'd be able to adjust the lacing here at the wrist, or here at the shoulder, or even down here at the shin.
Right, just a little so.
Brings the suit. I think a lot of people, when they look at suits, they wonder about the wrist cuffs because they look like they're way high up on the arm.
They are, and so the wrist, you couldn't have the glove hit exactly on your wrist bone because you wouldn't have had as much mobility to move within the suit. So if you put the rotation up here, your whole arm can move and then use your glove. The glove was not able to be bent using your wrist the way
Amazing.
you normally would with when you're using a glove on your arm. If you think of like a big gardening glove or something, you know, you're doing a lot of squeezing, but you're also doing this, and under pressure you needed more rotation.
Gotcha. I've spent my whole life loving peeking behind the curtain, right? And this is one of my favorite curtains to peek behind because nobody really realizes how much engineering and structure there is in a moon suit.
Yeah, we call this a personal spacecraft. So the astronaut could live, work, go to the bathroom, eat, sleep, whatever they needed to do. So if you lost pressure in the command module or the LEM or something happened, you would be in your personal spacecraft and be able to survive for a certain amount of time. They really are engineering models. I mean, in the museum world, we have textiles and garments and things, but I consider these more of a functional engineering model.
It's a craft, not a garment.
Right.
Now, I know that the red and blue wrist connects are for right and left, but what is the significance of the blue neck ring as opposed to the red neck ring we usually see?
So the blue would have been for training. It's just to signify this is like a training suit. People would have used it for testing. Only the flight suits had the red neck rings.
Only the ones that actually flew?
Right.
Okay.
So that's how you told the difference, and the helmet would also have that matching ring, so it would line up exactly right. Even though everything was built to NASA specifications and repeated, only one helmet fit with each neck ring exactly the way you would want to get them on and off. I mean,
they would pair them.
Get a little bit stuck or something if you try to trade them between the suits.
So the neck rings are monogamous.
Yes.
And this is the air manifold for getting air into the helmet, is that right?
Right. There's a complete ventilation system in here, so the environment was regulated when they were walking out to the launch pad. You'd see them often carrying those single environmental units that they were hooked up to, and then they would re-hook up into the command module. So they had inlet and outlet valves where they would trade off.
So one of these goes to a distributor that actually ends up out here and also out at the other parts of the suit.
And then they wore the liquid cooling garment, so they had water flow on those long underwear that we call them long underwear, but it would have had tiny little tubes running through them with water that circulated to keep them cool.
To regulate their temperature.
Right.
I really appreciate that, like when Stanley Kubrick was working with his team to design the suits for 2001, they did all these ribbed convolutes because NASA explained to them, this is where we're going with this. This is where the suit will need to go.
Yeah, and the story is really great because the engineer discovered how to do that by watching a tomato worm.
Wait a minute.
So, those little worms that move through the tomatoes patches, have you seen those green? And they realized that they could expand an accordion-like system and then recompress it and move that way. So he took that idea to fruition and built these rubberized accordion sections, which all have inside, because we've x-rayed them, straps of textile, almost like an elastic. It's like a band on each in each little valley.
Wow.
And so that kept it from completely ballooning out and not being able to come back.
I see. They had to, wow. And these are all natural rubbers?
This is actually a combination. So that is why we're having some of the preservation problems with them. It's a latex neoprene blend, which operated very well for use, but does not last long term. They had a 6-month lifespan.
A 6-month lifespan, and this is over 55 years old.
So it's sort of frozen in time here. It's probably reached the almost the end of being flexible.
That must cause you real problems in trying to get a mannequin inside of one of
It's really hard because these are quite fragile.
Yeah.
So the more we handle them, the worse it would be for the artifact. So we definitely need to handle them very carefully, taking the mannequin in and out when we're forming it.
Yeah.
We keep soft mannequin forms in them in storage now, so it just stays in the shape that it's been in.
So it doesn't have to be too distorted when you want to put it on display.
Right.
Now, why is this where and why is this particular suit being dressed for success?
So this one will be in our new Destination Moon exhibit in the museum when we open to the fall. This fall, we're opening what is called the Westin, so the first 8 galleries of our 23-gallery renovation. And it will be in a case upstairs on the mezzanine, which actually is built to look like the launch pad. So it's completely red, and the F1 engine is hanging in the center of it. And it's really going to be a great gallery. We have the command module Apollo 11 in there, Neil Armstrong spacesuit. And then this suit will be with 2 other suits showcasing the evolution up to that lunar suit and what it took to build that, what kind of prototypes we have in our collection, design decisions, and some of the other hardware that will be with that in the case.
Can we talk about ILC Dover a little bit, about what's remarkable about their production of this suit?
So ILC sewed all the soft goods at their building in Delaware, which is pretty amazing because you go and it's sort of like this 1960s time capsule still. But the seamstresses that sewed the suits, the women that helped with these, they came from the bra and girdle industry.
ILC Dover
ILC was
International Latex
right,
Corporation.
International Latex. but they had skills in sewing these sort of materials. So
For
soft,
Playtex.
soft rubbers, elastic materials. A lot of people in the 1960s didn't have the skill to work on those kind of fabrics.
Yeah.
So they sort of brought them all in, trained them. I think the last person retired about 2 years ago from this
Really?
original group.
I had no idea they were
yeah.
so long-lived.
Yeah, and they're just, I mean, there's whole stories about their contributions and their decisions and all the different things they had to do there. They constantly x-rayed pieces of the suit because they're little, they would need to make sure the pins weren't left in. So there's a whole process. And with the lunar suit ended up having 24 layers. So we're talking about sewing on rubbers and mylars and Dacron and spandex and all these different layers together to make up that insulating layer. And then they had to get everything just right with the patterns. And it's just amazing if you see some of their documentaries they've made.
I love the fact that when NASA needed to fit engineered parts onto soft bodies, it turned out that a bra and girdle manufacturer had the institutional knowledge to do it. That's a perfect match.
Yeah, no, it's ingenious, really. I mean, you had to take the talent you had where you had it in industry.
Yeah.
So
tell me about the discoloration I can see here on the chest around some of these pieces.
So a lot of even though you see that a lot of the stuff, fasteners and things are mechanically fastened using hardware screws, they all are adhered. So, you know, to get that seal to a fabric or the rubber, you still had to do, you know, adhesives, gaskets. You can see the rubber gasketing in here to protect that pressure seal. So this is just excess adhesive, commonly known as glues, you know, to the, we call them adhesives because it's a synthetic adhesive, but it would have just discolored over time. So they probably just brushed it on to get what they needed, and then now it's just sort of popping out. It's not causing damage to the suit, but there's no way to really reduce that staining or remove that. And it is part of the story.
Right.
So we do like to leave things that are part of the story, as long as they're not harming the suit from being preserved for long term.
Tell me if I'm right. This looks like a pretty spectacularly preserved for 55 years old.
This one is. I don't know quite why. I don't know if it was handled less or just sort of because it's not one that we keep on display often because it's not requested, that it just, you know, was in storage longer. We keep all the suits under very tight security and climate controlled conditions to make sure that they're preserved. But yeah, it's in great condition.
Do you get thrilled every time one of these comes in and you get to learn its interstices and adjust it for display?
I do, and I learned so much because our goal is to make them. I try to anticipate what the public wants to see, what they want to ask, what questions they would have. You know, why is this suit important is not necessarily my part of the job, it's the curator, but you know, we work hand in hand so tightly. But these suits that show the internal workings are my absolute favorite, and the early prototypes, because you know, we don't see them a lot. Everybody's familiar with the ones that are historically important to telling that story, but these tell a really different story. And you know, the science and engineering behind building these, especially so quickly. You know, we go back to that whole, like, I mean, it was going really rapid, fast. They were trying things, pulling things off shelves, utilizing things they had done for other military applications at that point, or other soft goods or hardware life support systems. So it's pretty fascinating.
Lisa, it's such a beautiful object. Thank you so much for letting us see it and experience it in VR. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.